So we saw in the previous videos how to create custom activity to use in a process or a rule or a custom REST API that could be used, for example, in a view component, or that could be used inside a third-party application. There are a couple of other objects you can create that I'm going to quickly show you, but that are less commonly used. The first one, so both of the examples are inside the test 2105 application that I created, and you have information about them inside the bundle. There is some documentation. They're not commonly used, so I don't really want to do a tutorial about them. So the first one is a command. And what is a command? A command is a special REST API, a special post REST API that triggers something on the server. The goal of it is just to say, do something, like trigger an action. And by default, it doesn't expect any answer back. So we use it, for example, in the platform to say that the user did some kind of activity. So some kind of live ping, if you want. But it's really not commonly used, and I really recommend you to use a standard REST API, a standard POST, or a standard GET REST API. It's really not commonly used at all. The other type is for it, like for example, a data page query, like I use for data page query. So if you are looking at record and you want to see what happens when I want some data, you can see that I have a request, and the request is a data page type, which is com BMC Resources record instance data page query. So this is a data page query. Data page query is returning data in a formatted way. So BMC has some out of the box data page query. The most famous one is the one to just get data, and you can leverage this, for example, in your Java code. It can be also useful if you want to get record instances from a third-party application, but you can create also your own data page query. And there is an example of that inside the test 2105 bundle when I use a custom data page query to display data inside a grid. So why would you do something like that? Well, let's say that you want to query data from a record instance and you want to massage data, you want to change something, you want to do some calculation, and you don't want to do that in a UI. Or let's say that you don't want to get data from a record instance, but you want to get data from, I don't know, a file, a distant server. For example, your Java code would query a third-party REST API, I don't know, from an ITSM server, from a Jira server, something. So you would get the data, you would put the data in a formatted way, and send it to be consumed, for example, by a grid. So the good thing is with data page query, the data will always look like this. So you can use this data page query inside the custom grid, for example, and because the data is going to be massaged a certain way, it will work. So if you are using, for example, for a custom grid, of course, you would have to implement your own filter, the search and everything. So it's a pretty complex operation. So you need to create the data page query, the execute part, you need to tell what's going to be returned. You need to give some parameters like the page size. You need to say what you want to get. Then you need to create, it needs to return basically a data page object. So it's pretty complex. If you want to see how it works, I would really recommend to look at the example I did, and that is documented. So it's test 2105 fruit data page query in the custom grid.